There's a number of different things if you wanted to just try to see change without drastically changing your calories and keeping track and doing a strict keto diet or whatever the case is. And the first thing would just be to increase your activity.
Hey, I want to lose fat, but I hate dieting. Every time I diet, I set myself up to fail. It never seems to work for me. Is it possible to lose fat without dieting? And if so, what would you recommend?
Yeah, it's a fantastic question. And the first thing I wanted to talk about is what is the definition of dieting? So when you look it up online, it's simply to restrict oneself to small amounts or special kinds of food in order to lose weight. So where it gets really challenging is I do believe it's more of the word that holds a lot of people back. And what I mean by this is when you start to think that you're going on a diet, there's a lot of emotions that take place. For those of you who have failed numerous diets over and over again, when you try another one, you would negatively associate that word with the failure that you've had in the past. And I think where it gets really, really challenging is that that's all you think about is like, I can't have any fun. I have to restrict myself. I can't do anything at all. And it just sets you up for failure. So the way that we look at this entire journey is just a way of eating, right? To fix your nutrition, to eat better, to make different changes. And we don't exactly say we're going on a diet. We say, hey, we're going to eat better, we're going to eat more nutritious, and we're going to make changes. And I think that alone would be my first thing to help you if you are someone that really does struggle. Now, with that being said, there's a number of different things if you wanted to just try to see change without drastically changing your calories and keeping track and doing a strict keto diet or whatever the case is. And the first thing would just be to increase your activity. If you start to move more, you start to run, you start to walk more, you start to lift more, that alone will make drastic changes over time. Now, when you combine that with just simply practicing mindful eating as well as controlling your portion sizes, these are the two greatest things that if you didn't want to touch a calorie tracking app, if you didn't want to weigh and do a ton of different things within your day, that alone will make a big difference. But overall, in a nutshell, in order to see change, you do have to start to make better nutritional choices. And whatever approach it is that you take, for us, we are big fans of logging, and our clients over time and overall have found that they don't feel restricted. They don't feel like they're doing this crazy intense diet because we can still enjoy fun foods because we have different goals set up where it's like more of a realistic approach. And so instead of them saying, hey, I have to do this crazy intense diet, they say, hey, it's just a lifestyle change and I'm here for it. And that's what makes a big change. But I know I kind of popped off on that, and I'm sure Josh has a lot to say as well.
Yeah, I loved Kyle's point about the association with dieting and being miserable. And I always come back to dieting. Like, I love the meme dieting. It starts with die. Like, you feel like you're dying when you're doing it. And that's why I much prefer the term cutting. And I like the concept of phases. So obviously, if we've lived our life, we've had extra desserts, we've went to events, vacations, lived our lives, it's very natural that we would gain some weight. We'd be in a surplus and we'd be a little bit heavier as a result of that. So instead, we can combat that by actively entering a cutting phase, where I like to think of it as cutting out the garbage, cutting out the extras, and being in that deficit for a time. And it's not indefinite, it's for a time. And once again, we use that 80-20 rule where, yes, I would cut out usually a lot of my luxuries because it'll take a lot of my calories, but it's not to say I don't have them at all. I'll just generally eat cleaner because it's easier to actually adhere and stick to my calories. But that doesn't mean I still can't enjoy my favorite food. So it's just that concept. And if you wanted to lose fat without actively entering a dieting phase or without actively logging your calories, can be done, but it is like a lot harder than it needs to be. I just prefer to drop my calories a bit, like Kyle said, log. I think that's the easier way to do it. If you're newer to the gym or you're someone who's relatively in shape, you have a really good physique, you're already at a great place, you could probably get away by just going on a few extra walks, so increasing some metric of cardio, being intentional with your food, aiming to have a little bit of a smaller portion, have less dessert, if you will, and like cut out those extra luxuries. Doing some of those basics or increasing training volume can actually cause you to lose fat and have success. I just don't like that it's not something that you can track and replicate consistently, because oftentimes you'll see those results for a week, you'll go back to those old patterns and those old behaviors, and you'll see all that weight come right back. And that's why I do prefer to say, okay, I'm going to be in this much of a deficit. I'm going to aim to lose pound to pound and a half a week, and that should take me in 5 weeks to 5 pounds, even at a pound a week, which isn't aggressive. So it's a lot easier to be very calculated with it in that regard. But even if you're just new to anything, like I always recommend to people, if you want to get into this, really limit liquid calories. So if you're drinking pops, if you're having a lot of alcoholic drinks, a lot of mixed drinks, a lot of fancy Starbucks drinks, like all these things are delicious, milkshakes, whatever, but they're delicious for a reason. And it's very easy to pack in calories without being intentional of it. So if you can work those away, really limit your portioning of desserts and try to have less sweets and less unhealthy snacks, like doing those basic changes alone will help a lot of people just lose fat immediately. Even trying a no drinking challenge, if you do drink a lot and you're getting a lot of your calories from alcohol, making that one small change as well can go a long way. And one thing I like to challenge all my clients with is we all know what we need to do. We just need to do it. So we all have different vices. I love a lot of food. Usually when I want to cut, I just cut down my portioning because I'd love to have like 2 dinners and then have 2 bigger portions at both dinners. Like if I had it my way, I like to eat a lot of food. Kyle loves sweets, and if he has sweets around, he will poke at them. So when he's cutting, he's like, I need to cut these out. Even the other day we had mochis, and he's like, oh, they're too tempting. Like I'm not going to keep them in the house. I'd rather just intentionally go out for an ice cream when I want it. So if you know yourself and you know your psychology and you're honest with yourself, it makes it a lot easier. And everyone has different things that they're better and worse with. And maybe for you, you don't eat all day, and then you rush at the end of the day and you eat something you shouldn't. And there's ways you can get in front of that as well. So really identify like what's the thing you know you need to do if you want to lose fat, make that change. And if you want to guarantee it, definitely just start tracking your calories because it makes it very, very calculated.
And what I will say on that is like, I do believe tracking your calories, and some people would consider it dieting and whatnot, but I believe that taking that act of, spending time putting it into MyFitnessPal or whatever app you use actually helps you not have to diet intensely. And what I mean by this is there's some people out there who will have to restrict themselves a ton. They have to eat specific foods. They'll have to do all this stuff. And they're going to be the ones who actually end up suffering more, although they're not putting something into an app and taking those extra few minutes. So on one side, we have that person who's on keto, who's not really tracking anything, but they're feeling very restricted. They're set to a certain type of food. Their calories are very low because they can only eat a certain amount of stuff. And then on one end, the other person who is, yes, technically dieting. They're in a calorie deficit, but they have more food freedom. They can go out for an ice cream cone. They can still have more flexibility. And even when you look at the numbers, it's more freeing to know, hey, here's what I have left. Here's what I can budget. Here's what I can do. So the word dieting gets confusing, I guess you could say. But on that one side, flexible dieter, the person who's tracking, yes, they are essentially dieting, but it feels better. You feel more free. You feel like you have less food restriction. And that word is like very funky, as I was saying before. And I'm glad Josh brought up the cutting example, or even for me, sometimes the shredding example. Like if you, let's say, are trying to gain muscle and you just keep saying, I'm bulking, I'm bulking, I'm bulking, most people will just start eating a ton of food and just that's in their mind. Whereas if I say, hey, I'm entering a lean muscle gain phase, or, you go to an event and you say, hey, I'm actually doing an exciting shred for summer, it sounds really cool. But if you go and you say to someone, hey, I'm dieting again, and it just sounds like negative, and like a lot of people associate that, negativity towards that word. But overall, a couple takeaways if you're looking to just really exceed and excel and not have to worry day to day is just really make sure to increase your activity, control your portion sizes and practice mindful eating, prioritize protein and fiber within each meal, eat more healthy whole foods, minimally processed, and focus on improving your sleep and minimizing stress. And those 5 things alone will make such a big difference whether you touch an app or not, and whether you follow a strict specific type of eating. Those things alone make such a big difference.
Yeah, and if you want to maintain a muscular, relatively lean physique, one of the easiest things you can do, and one thing I tell a lot of different people, it's just a lot of people won't do it, is walk 8,000 plus steps a day, eat a gram of body weight of protein each day. And like if you do those 2 things and train 5 days a week, you'll be pretty elite in fitness. Like it sounds ridiculously basic, but if you can hit those 3 metrics, I assure you, you'll be blown away at how lean and how great of a physique you can maintain, because you have a great level of output. You'll be quite active. If you're doing 8,000 steps, you're lifting 5 times heavy. And then with the protein, you're going to be somewhat intentional with your diet if you're eating gram per body weight, because there is some challenge that comes around that. You'll be eating healthier foods that sate you more, and it'll fill in a lot of the gaps. And obviously you can get way more in the weeds, and some people could find a way to corrupt this, I'm certain. But in general, if you can do those 3 things, I think you'd be blown away with how impressive your physique can be.